pew organ softly humming in the background, congregation murmuring amen and preach. Destiny is not a suggestion, it's a summons. It's not a polite invitation with an RSVP. It's not something you casually pencil into your calendar. No, destiny is loud. Destiny is disruptive. Destiny is divine warfare, knocking at your door saying, "Get up. You were born for more than this." It doesn't whisper, it roars. It doesn't ask, it demands. It's not one of the many options you choose from. It's the one thing you were born to do, and until you surrender to it, life will always feel like something is missing. See, the reason you're uncomfortable is not because you're failing, it's because you're being called. That tension you feel at your 9 to 5, that uneasiness when you see someone doing what you know you're meant to do, that's not jealousy, that's your destiny screaming through the cracks of your current situation, saying, "Why are you hiding? I put this fire in you for a reason." Let me tell you something. A suggestion can be ignored. A suggestion can be put off. But a summons? A summons is serious. A summons means court is in session. And when heaven summons you, when the Spirit of God pulls your name off the shelf and says, "It's time, baby," you better be ready to stand up and walk into rooms you never thought you belonged in. You ever seen a seed that refuses to grow? It'll crack the concrete just to get to the sun. That's what destiny will do to you. It'll break routines, destroy comfort zones, and even dismantle relationships that are choking your growth. Not because God is cruel, but because He's committed. He is committed to what He put inside you. That idea you can't shake, that business that won't leave you alone, that book, that ministry, that movement, you didn't think that up. That's heaven placing a demand on your potential. You may be flipping burgers today, but that doesn't mean destiny isn't calling. Don't confuse your location with your purpose. God has a way of hiding greatness in ordinary places. Just because you're working a job that doesn't look like your calling, doesn't mean your calling has been canceled. Moses was tending sheep in the desert when God summoned him. David was delivering lunch when he found Goliath. Ruth was picking up leftovers when she stepped into her destiny. Don't get discouraged by where you start. The summons will find you. You know how sometimes you wake up and feel like you're meant for something more? That's not a midlife crisis. That's a divine stirring. That's your soul reminding you that you're not called to be average. You weren't made to clock in, clock out, and die full of regrets. You were made to disrupt darkness. You were made to carry light. You were made to shift atmospheres with your presence. Look at your own life. Haven't you noticed how, no matter how far you stray from your purpose, something always pulls you back? You try to bury your gifts under busyness, but they keep resurrecting. You try to silence your voice with excuses, but it keeps crying out. You try to settle, but destiny won't let you. That's not coincidence. That's the summons. Destiny has a way of tapping you on the shoulder when you least expect it. You could be driving home from work, listening to a podcast, and suddenly a sentence hits you in the chest and you start weeping. Not because you're sad, but because your soul just recognized a truth it's been waiting for. That's the call. You could be watching someone succeed and feel that tug. That should be me. And let me tell you something. If that thought keeps coming up, it's not about envy. It's about alignment. You're not mad they made it. You're mad that you know deep down you haven't stepped into what God put inside you yet. That's not a suggestion. That's destiny shaking the cage, saying, "Let me out." Sometimes it shows up through pain. Oh yes, destiny doesn't always arrive wrapped in comfort. Sometimes it comes in the form of loss, betrayal, sickness, even failure. Not to destroy you, but to push you, to strip away the distractions, so all that's left is raw, pure calling. Because God will allow a breakdown to initiate a breakthrough. He'll let you lose what was never meant for you, just to get you aligned with what was always yours. And don't think it's too late. You're not too old. You haven't missed it. There's no expiration date on destiny. If God could resurrect Lazarus after 4 days in the grave, he can resurrect your dreams. If Sarah could birth a promise in her 90s, what makes you think God can't accelerate time for you? One word, one idea, one act of obedience can turn your whole life around. But you gotta pick up the call. You know deep down, you were never built for the background. You've been trying to shrink to make others comfortable, but every time you dim your light, something in you aches. That's the call. That's the summons reminding you. You weren't born to fit in. You were born to stand out. So when you feel that tug, that burning, that divine restlessness, don't dismiss it. Don't drown it with Netflix. Don't numb it with busyness. Stop, be still, and say, "Speak, Lord, your servant is listening," because the call has gone out and your name is on it. Delay is not denial, but delay can become disobedience. It's the whisper that says, "Tomorrow, I'll start then," while your heart is crying out to begin today. You ever watched the sunrise and thought, "I'll catch the next one," and you miss it because you hit snooze? That's delay. You're not denied that sunrise. You simply slept through your appointment with the dawn. But if you keep hitting snooze, you'll wake up at noon and wonder why your life feels dim. Think about the teenager who dreams of college, but keeps telling himself, "I'll study next week." He fills his plate with distractions, video games, social media, late night parties, and convinces himself he's in no hurry. But every day he waits, the college application deadline edges closer. He's not been denied admission yet. He's been delayed, and that delay might cost him his acceptance. His future is knocking, but he's too busy arranging cushions to answer the door. Or consider the aspiring writer who buys a fresh notebook and brand new pens, but never opens the first page. She lines them up like trophies and admires their neatness, believing that one day she'll find the perfect moment to spill her soul onto the paper. Meanwhile, her story grows older in her heart, waiting for the right words, the right mood, the right inspiration. And so her destiny as an author fades, not because the manuscripts aren't wanted, but because she's too polite to disturb her own comfort zone. I saw a man who parked his dreams in a garage, promising he'd build his invention when the kids graduate. The years passed, first a graduation, then another, and then some. His blueprints collected dust, and his workshop turned into a storage closet. One morning he woke up to an empty house, realizing his children had flown, and his window of influence had closed. His delay wasn't denial, opportunities still waited, but he let time slip through his fingers until obedience became impossible. You know that feeling, when your heart pounds, and you sense you're supposed to reach out to someone, to forgive, to reconcile, to bless. You tell yourself, "I'll call them tomorrow," and tomorrow becomes a week, a month, a year. Eventually, the phone number changes, the address vanishes, and your chance to heal that relationship disappears. That's delay turning into disobedience. The moment God gave you to mend a bridge was yesterday, and today you live with the regret of an unspoken word. In the gym, people warm up for hours, but skip the workout. They buy the membership, post their progress pics, talk about gains, but avoidance reigns. They delay lifting the weights an inch because they fear the burn. But that hesitation turns to habit, and they end up further from their goal than on day one. Their bodies don't know the good intentions of tomorrow. They respond to the work of today. There was a woman who inherited a vacant lot and dreamed of planting a garden. She mapped it out, bought seeds, and researched soil composition. But the first seed lay in its packet through spring, summer, and fall. When winter came, she shelved the project, promising next spring. But next spring, she discovered the parcel had been sold. Her delay, the seasons of maybe later, became the sale that sold her dream right out from under her feet. Delay is not always a trap. Sometimes it's the seasoning before the feast. But when your soul stirs with urgency, when inspiration slaps you in the face, you've passed the seasoning stage. It's time to serve the meal. The carpenter who measures twice but never cuts is measuring his dreams to death. The musician who tunes his guitar but never plays silences his own song. The entrepreneur who perfects his pitch slides into analysis paralysis, each tweak a step further from the podium where his idea belongs. When delay moves from prudent planning into fear-driven stalling, it becomes rebellion. God doesn't need your perfection. He needs your obedience. He's not waiting for your checklist. He's waiting for your yes. Pharaoh decreed, no, but Moses obeyed. Caleb marched up the mountain in faith, while 10 spies delayed out of fear. Delay doesn't change God's promise. It ruins your participation in it. So when that thought comes, I'll do it later, remember, destiny doesn't wait. Your moment of obedience is the spark that ignites your purpose. Procrastination is the jailer of potential. Every second you postpone is a coin you deposit in regret's bank. You may still withdraw your dream later, but the interest you'll pay in lost time is a debt you can never repay. When you feel the call, when your spirit stirs, answer immediately. Open the notebook, make the call, plant the seed, mail the application, step into that gym, sing that verse, pitch that idea. Each act of obedience dissolves delay. Each moment you choose action over hesitation, you break the chains that bind you to one day. Because delay is not denial, but delay can become disobedience, and disobedience will cost you everything you were born to be. You've ever sat in a lifeboat, drifting on calm waters, feeling the safety of its walls yet longing for the shore you know is out there. That's the feeling of safe. You're protected from the waves, but you're not moving toward where you're meant to go. Safety cushions us, it cradles us in its arms, but assignment pushes us forward, sometimes into choppy seas. Imagine an artist who fills sketchbooks with the same still life drawings over and over. Perfect light, perfect angles, perfect shading. Every page is a masterpiece of comfort, but none of those drawings ever hang in a gallery. The artist is safe in mastery, but stuck in repetition. Look at the single parent who took a job at the local grocery store. Because the hours are predictable and the benefits reliable, they clock in, bag groceries, clock out, and the paycheck arrives like clockwork. Day after day, that safety net keeps the lights on and the rent paid. But the dreams of starting a home daycare, of writing a children's book, of launching a tutoring side hustle, all stay folded in a drawer. They're safe, but safe is not assignment. Assignment is the energy that jolts you awake at 3 a.m. with an idea you can't ignore, even if it rattles your safe schedule. Think about the office worker who knows every shortcut in the company's software, who can navigate every policy document blindfolded, who never misses a beat in the weekly status meeting. They've mastered the environment. They're safe. Then one day they watch a colleague present a bold proposal for an internal innovation challenge. The proposal could transform the division, but it's risky. The office stalwart sits back, mouths "good job," and returns to their spreadsheet fortress. Safe, yes, but safe is not assignment. Assignment wants them to stand up, to speak up, to propose their own vision, even if it might fall flat. Hear the story of the retired teacher who volunteers at the library twice a week, shelving books and greeting visitors. She's beloved, appreciated, and feels purpose in her routine. Yet every year, she sees a sign for literacy tutoring programs that need mentors. She qualifies. She could train volunteers. She could even lead the program. But she prefers the predictable comfort of shelving. Safe, yes, but safe is not assignment. Assignment tells her to step into training rooms, to face her own fears of public speaking, to lead the change she's been watching for years. On the freeway of life, safe is the slow lane, with cruise control on. You relax, you coast, you tire of the view, but you stick with it. Assignment is the fast lane, demanding your focus, your courage, your skill. Picture the driver who sets the cruise at 60, drifting past exits that would take them into new towns, new jobs, new relationships, because the radio is good and the seats comfortable. Safe, yes, But safe is not assignment. Assignment flashes exit signs like neon. Vision board workshop. Exit here. The driver can't ignore the call forever. Observe the high school student who gets straight A's in classes they excel at, who avoids the elective theater class because public performances give them butterflies. They're safe in academic studies. They're praised by parents and teachers. Meanwhile, deep inside, they write monologues, dramatic scenes that could move audiences to tears. Assignment whispers, try a scene. But butterflies keep their feet planted firmly in the classroom. Safe, yes, but safe is not assignment. Assignment draws them on stage, under hot lights, vulnerability blazing, where their gifts find the air they need to breathe. Consider the small business owner, whose shop is breaking even, whose staff is comfortable, whose customers never complain. They're safe in predictability. Then one afternoon, they meet a vendor offering an eco-friendly product line that resonates with a new wave of conscious consumers. Introducing it would require retraining staff, redesigning displays, crafting new marketing. It's a leap. Safe, yes, but safe is not assignment. Assignment insists, take the leap. Serve your community at a higher level. You may be safe in a relationship that's comfortable, predictable, soothing, like a blanket you never want to discard. But assignment might be calling you to speak hard truths, to set new boundaries, to step into a love that stretches your heart. You might be safe in the shadows of your current life, but assignment demands the front row, the spotlight, the risk. It's the difference between whispering a prayer in your bedroom and preaching a word that shakes a sanctuary. You're not stuck, you're safe, but safe is not your assignment. Every time you choose comfort over calling, you trade potential for predictability, destiny for security. Assignment beckons like a distant drumbeat, persistent and unrelenting. It asks you to push beyond your safe harbor, into the currents of purpose. And once you feel that tug, once you sense the vibration in your bones, you realize that safety was never the goal. Your assignment awaits, uncomfortable, unseen, and unforgettable. You ever notice how a whisper in a quiet room feels like an earthquake in your spirit? That's how the divine works. He doesn't always speak in stillness. Sometimes he shakes your world so violently that you can't ignore the tremors. Picture the teenager who's been cruising on autopilot, sleeping in every morning, scrolling through feeds without purpose until one day the school bell rings to a fire drill they didn't schedule. Sirens, alarms, chaos in the hallways. Suddenly the mundane routine is upended and the adrenaline forces them to move, to evacuate, to respond. That chaos feels terrifying. But in that very disturbance, their legs remember how to run, their lungs remember how to gasp, and their heart remembers that life is meant to be lived on purpose. God will disturb your comfort to activate your calling. Think of the corporate executive who's mastered every boardroom script, memorized the PowerPoint slides, and built a comfortable fortress of predictable quarterly reports. Then the company announces a sudden reorganization, positions vanish, roles shuffle, geography shift, and she's thrust into a team she's never met, facing markets she's never sold to. Panic, yes, but then innovation. She finds herself pitching ideas she never knew she had, speaking a language of risk that ignites her creativity. That unexpected boardroom becomes her proving ground, and the person who once feared the unknown now stands at the edge ready to lead. God disturbs your comfort to reveal the hidden wings you never noticed. Or picture the single parent who's carved out a schedule based on daycare drop-offs, soccer practices, and bedtime routines so precise you could set your watch by them. Then illness strikes. Childcare closes, the sitter calls in sick, bills pile up, and suddenly every plan unravels like a cheap sweater. Anxiety crashes in waves, but amid the panic she hears a new beat, resourcefulness. She learns to juggle conference calls from the laundry room, to schedule virtual therapy sessions between snack times, to find sacred space in 5-minute breaks. That storm feels unfair, but in that storm she discovers resilience she never knew lived inside her. God disturbs your comfort to forge a strength that only struggle can birth. Imagine the artist who paints at dawn, always in the same corner of the attic studio where the light filters just so because any shift in shade or angle makes her skin crawl. One morning the landlord shows up with notice: the attic is being converted. You have 2 weeks to move your easel or lose it. Panic chills her bones. She can't paint in the new spot, not with that bright, harsh light. But necessity drives her into the downtown loft she never considered, where the wide windows spill raw sunlight and strangers watch through the panes. At first she tries to block out their stares, then she starts to embrace them. Their curious faces begin to influence her brushstrokes, and her art becomes a public conversation. God shakes the attic to push you into the city where your work can speak for itself. There's the community organizer who's been running the same neighborhood cleanup every month, the same block, the same volunteers, the same handful of parked cars to pressure wash. Attendance wanes and the impact dwindles, but he's comfortable with his routine. Then a developer plans a skyscraper next door, threatening to erase that block entirely. The disturbance is seismic. Neighbors are scared. Elected officials demand meetings. Local news cameras roll in. Suddenly, the organizer steps onto a larger stage, negotiating zoning commissions, mobilizing city council, amplifying his voice beyond the cracked sidewalks he swept. That threat to his safe project propels him into the corridors of power he never imagined. God will disturb your comfort to launch your influence. Remember the young couple content in their one-bedroom apartment who fashioned every corner to fit their budget and their pay. They've memorized the creaks in the floors, the echo in the living room, the angle of sunrise through the gap in the blind. Then a job offer pops up in another city, higher salary, bigger place, better schools, but it means uprooting everything familiar, neighbors' routines, the coffee shop that knows your order by heart. Fear rattles the cups in the cabinet, but they step out anyway, pack the boxes, sign the lease from miles away, and in that disturbance they discover a deeper unity, a fresh sense of adventure, a community that greets them at the doorstep. God disrupts your comfort to deepen your relationships and expand your horizon. You might be safe in your habits, morning jogs that never change route, a desk job that never asks you to speak in public, friendships that never challenge your beliefs. But when the divine disturbs your comfort, it's because there's a new horizon waiting. He'll let the shoe pinch so that you'll hobble out of the rut. He'll let the well go dry so that you'll chase after rivers. He'll let the forecast predict rain so that you'll learn to dance. Every disturbance is a summons, every tremor a trumpet call, every uprooting a planting in fresh soil. When the ground shakes beneath you, when the meeting is canceled, the contract lost, the diagnosis delivered, the plain job evaporates, the landlord knocks on the door, don't curse the quake. Don't beg for the old routine to return. This is activation. The very disturbance you dread is the banner under which your destiny advances. So catch your breath, steady your legs, open your eyes to the new landscape and say, "Here I am." Even as the earth still trembles, you've stared at that sign long enough. You've prayed over that email thread, you've annotated every detail, you've sought out every second opinion, and yet the message you're waiting for is already in your hands. God has given you clarity, He painted a path under your feet, but you keep asking for GPS coordinates you don't. When the Holy Spirit illuminates a door, you don't need a flashing neon sign, you need the courage to walk through it. Think of the college graduate who got the acceptance letter in the mail but spent weeks forwarding it to friends and family, waiting for someone else to verify that it was real. She even emailed the admissions office again. "Are you sure it's me you want?" Meanwhile, scholarship deadlines came and went, orientation schedules filled up, and her spot slipped into someone else's hand. She had clarity stamped on official letterhead, but she quaked in the shadow of her own doubt. Clarity isn't a suggestion, it's a summons. When God has spoken, confirmation is a delay you cannot afford. Consider the young professional who dreamed of starting a nonprofit but kept asking mentors, "Is this the right focus? Should I pivot to something else?" Each mentor nodded and added caveats. "What about funding? Have you done market research? What if it fails?" Their well-intentioned questions became a chorus of uncertainty, and with every additional opinion, his call grew fainter in his ears. Meanwhile, the need in his community went unmet. Clarity had come inside him as an unshakable conviction, but he let external voices drown out the voice that actually mattered. You know that moment when you meet someone and your spirit whispers, "This is the one." Maybe it's the person you're meant to marry, or the business partner you're meant to build with, or the mentor you're meant to serve under. Yet you ping them on social media, you circle back weeks later, you bring up the what-ifs, all to draw out their commitment first. Meanwhile, life keeps moving. They move across town, they take another role, they find someone else to collaborate with. You had clarity on your assignment, but you treated it like a rumor you needed verified by the grapevine. There was a musician who felt God's anointing heavy on his voice. Every time he tried to sing quietly at church, the congregation would lean in, tears would flow, people would testify. but he insisted on public auditions. I need to know if producers think I'm ready. He went through rejection after rejection, wearing down his spirit, until the unfiltered clarity of a homemade worship night reminded him God's confirmation doesn't come from contracts, it comes from conviction. His voice wasn't dormant, his faith had. The moment he sang with abandon on the church altar, the deals followed. Remember the entrepreneur who mapped out a business plan on a napkin because he woke up with an idea that wouldn't let him sleep. He circled back to investors 6 months later, but by then his napkin idea had gone viral on TikTok through someone else's spin. He'd waited for validation in boardrooms instead of launching in his basement. God had given clarity in the form of restless nights and relentless passion, but he treated it like a casual thought instead of a divine download. You might be in a job that doesn't fulfill you, yet every morning you hit snooze on the whispers in your soul because you need just one more sign. If the same thought surfaces day after day, I should write that book, I should learn that trade, I should volunteer for that cause, that repetition is confirmation enough. Stop chasing lightning bolts when you're living under constant sunshine. God doesn't flinch when he calls. He plants a fire in your belly that won't let you rest until you obey. I know of a teacher who felt the stir to transition from the classroom to coaching adults in leadership. Every principal she talked to encouraged her to stay, praising her gift with children. Even her spouse reminded her of her tenure, her secure pension, her status, so she kept asking, am I really supposed to leave? All the while her coaching clients waited in the wings, hungry for her insight. It wasn't until she stepped into a workshop she'd set up in a neighbor's home that she realized clarity had never abandoned her, only her courage had. Once she taught that first session, the confirmations arrived in bookings and referrals, but what she'd needed all along was the faith to treat her own conviction as gospel. Don't let the fear of being wrong paralyze you when God has already whispered right in your spirit. When you feel that undeniable pull, that certain stirring that makes your heart leap, treat it like a holy contract. Resist the urge to run back through the maze of opinions and caveats. You don't need 1,000 witnesses to a vision you already saw yourself. You need the faith to speak, yes, Lord, and move. Every time you second guess the clarity you've been given, you build walls around your own calling. You tell destiny to wait while you weigh pros and cons. You tell promise to pause until you've gathered more data. But the Word made flesh didn't pause to conduct a focus group. He said, let there be, and light burst forth. In your life, when clarity comes, it's the light breaking through the darkness, the signal flare over the forest, the champion's call on the battlefield. So when you're standing at the crossroads of decision, hearing the echo of your own dream, stop asking for the echo to answer you back. Hear the still, small voice and walk boldly. Confirmation won't quiet your spirit, it will fuel your obedience. And every step you take in the path you've already been shown will echo like thunder across the hills where your destiny waits. You ever felt like your world was collapsing, like the skies opened and everything you built was washed away? That's the storm talking to you, not condemning you. It's God's way of clearing the field, pulling up every root that's choking your growth. Imagine the single mother who lost her job overnight, rent is due, babysitter fees unpaid, and pride screaming to keep her from asking for help. But in that violent gust of loss, she discovers a community of neighbors who rally around her, neighbors she never knew she had. The storm didn't sentence her to despair, it set her in the middle of an army she never would have found otherwise. Think about the college student who bombed her final exam and watched her GPA crumble. She felt sentenced to failure, her dream scholarship slipping through her trembling fingers. Then she joins a study group, reluctantly at first, and finds mentors in her peers, friendships that sharpen her mind and fortify her spirit. That setback wasn't a tombstone, it was a launch pad, a pit stop to learn humility, to ask for help, to build a team that carries her farther than she ever thought possible. Or the entrepreneur whose first product launch flops in the market. The reviews sting, the investors scoff, the bank account bleeds. In the agony, he questions his calling, wondering if that dream was only a cruel joke. But as he sifts through feedback, he discovers insights that would have taken years to learn. In the debris of that failure, he unearths his strongest prototype yet. The storm didn't sentence his vision to death. It prepared the raw materials for a reinvention that would captivate the world. Have you seen the athlete who tears an ACL during a championship match? The immediate devastation shakes every limb, every bone, every dream.
But in the slow, painful rehab, she learns discipline, patience, mental toughness, virtues she never polished because she was too busy running. When she finally returns to the court, she's not just an athlete, she's a warrior molded in the crucible of pain, stronger than she was before. Her storm wasn't a verdict, it was her personal force. Picture the couple whose marriage hits a season of betrayal and mistrust, like a hurricane ripping through the walls of their home. They face counseling, tears, arguments that leave them raw. But in each honest conversation, they learn empathy, forgiveness, and the power of vulnerability. What looked like a sentence of separation becomes the setup for a covenant deeper than they ever could have written on their own. Their storm wasn't the end of their love, it was the baptism that rebirthed it. Consider the corporate executive blindsided by a hostile takeover. The investors withdraw. The board turns its back, and overnight she's out, her title, her salary, her accustomed corner office gone. In that whirlwind, she's forced to confront her identity beyond her resume. She rediscovers passions she buried under deadlines, volunteering at a shelter, mentoring young professionals, launching a social enterprise. The storm didn't sentence her to obscurity, it set her on a path of purpose that transcends any corner office. Even the seasons teach this truth. The autumn wind strips the trees of every leaf until they stand skeletal and bare, condemned to dormancy. But beneath the soil, the roots are busy storing energy, preparing for resurrection. When spring arrives, those trees erupt in fresh green, more vibrant than before the fall. The storm of winter is not their sentence, it's their setup for greater glory. Your storm could look like the diagnosis you never expected, a medical report that changes everything. At first it feels like a death sentence, but then you meet fellow survivors, you learn to advocate for yourself, you become an inspiration for others, walking the same road. The hardship becomes the support that transforms your life into a testament of triumph. Storms don't define you, they refine you. They don't throw you off course, they reroute you to destinations you couldn't have charted otherwise. When the thunder cracks and the rain falls, it's not your sentence, it's your set. Will you let the winds uproot you, or will you let them plant you deeper?
You've ever tried planting a rose in a cactus garden? You dig a hole between the spines, you drop in the seedling, you water it gently, and the next morning you find it wilted, choked by sand, begging for richer soil. That's what it's like trying to birth greatness in a place built for average. The environment around you shapes the roots of your dreams. If you cling to safe soil, you'll never taste the bloom you were designed to produce. Imagine the teacher who starts every day in a staff lounge filled with complaints about budgets, behavior problems, and bureaucracy. She whispers in the corner, "I want innovation," but her only company is cynicism. Day after day, she takes her lesson plans from that same weary conversation, and her creativity dies of neglect. But when she steps into a weekend mastermind group with educators who are rewriting the playbook on engagement, she returns to her classroom ignited, her methods on fire, proof that greatness can only spring where ambition is fed. Consider the graphic designer who works in an agency that cranks out the same cookie-cutter ads, the same stock images, the same safe color palettes. Every brief is an invitation to reinforce the status quo. He dreams of branding campaigns that break molds, but his desk is wedged between cubicles whose walls are paper-thin echoes of compliance. Then one night he joins an online collective of disruptors, showing their prototypes, pixel art that leaps, typefaces that shout, visuals that dare. His mind expands. He returns the next day with sketches that shock his boss, because he tasted the air outside the echo chamber of average. There was a young athlete on a high school track team that never qualified for the championship. The coach's mantra was just run, as if participation alone was the goal. He stayed in the same pack, never pushing the pace, never believing he could break the school record. But when he started training at a club coached by a former Olympian, everything shifted. Interval sprints replaced easy laps. Data on form replaced disregard for mechanics. Suddenly he's smashing personal bests, crossing the finish line, gasping for air and glory. Proof that greatness requires a crucible more intense than the warm-ups that average demands. Think about the small-town entrepreneur whose only local networking is at the Chamber of Commerce luncheons, where everyone trades business cards and pats each other on the back. Compliments flow, deals seldom. He says one day I'll expand, but the echoes in that room keep him anchored to the zip code of comfort. Then he attends a national conference in another city, upgrades his ticket, sleeps in a different time zone, listens to founders who scaled globally. When he returns home, he's no longer selling $500 packages. He's pitching $1 million investments because he's brought the big league ecosystem to his backyard. You know, the friend who's been telling the same jokes in the same circle for years and wonders why laughter has grown polite, half-hearted, predictable. He's the king of the comfort zone, the court jester of complacency. But the moment he moves to a new city where humor tastes different, where cultures collide, where dialects challenge his timing, he discovers a wellspring of fresh material. His punchlines crack open like pistons. He wakes up the audience because he's no longer playing to the echo of yesterday. Parents often fall into the trap of raising children in neighborhoods where dreams go to sleep early. They send their kids to the same after-school clubs, the same play dates with the same circle of nice families who never challenge each other to stretch. The children inherit polite routines, confident mediocrity, the soft lullabies of good enough. But when a parent enrolls their child in a robotics camp 2 towns over, where failure is encouraged and prototypes explode, the child learns resilience, creativity, the thrill of building something never built before. That environment births innovators, not successors. Maybe you're the office worker who's clinging to a desk in a department that measures performance by how quickly you respond to emails. Your ambition is suffocated by the ding of the inbox. The walls are lined with screens that act as mirrors, reflecting nothing but sameness. Then you transfer to a team whose KPI is impact, where missed targets prompt creativity, where risk is rewarded, where I don't know is celebrated as the threshold of discovery. You start coming home with your soul still in your chest, fired up, alive. Even your morning routine can betray your potential. You wake at the same time, sip the same coffee, scroll through the same newsfeed, drain your mind of fresh input before you've even brushed your teeth. That pattern primes you for average performance. But replace that routine with a cold plunge, a 3-sentence journal prompt that dares you to envision tomorrow's headline, a podcast that interviews pioneers at the edge of chaos, and you prime yourself for greatness. Each habit you build beyond the average environment nourishes the seed of your destiny. You can't birth greatness in a place built for average. The walls, the voices, the rhythms around you, they carve channels for complacency. You must move into new soil, new circles, new storms that demand more of you than you think you can give. Only there will your roots find the nutrients of courage, your stem the support of accountability, your petals the light of possibility, ready to open wide for all the world to see the masterpiece you were always meant to become. You've walked through the fire, felt those flames lick at your skin, and you didn't just walk out, you emerged carrying scars that testify to the power of survival. When you face betrayal, when rejection slams the door in your face, when illness steals your breath, you collect a story that no stranger can fabricate. And that story gives you the authority to speak, to stand up and say, I've been there, and here's what I learned. Think of the teenager who grew up in a neighborhood where violence was the soundtrack of every night. She watched friends fall to bullets. She felt the weight of police sirens like a lullaby, and she learned to duck beneath broken windows. Yet she made it through high school, graduated with honors, and now stands at assemblies preaching hope to kids who believe escape is impossible. Her testimony isn't hypothetical, it's concrete proof that walls can be climbed, that chains can be broken, that the future can outshine the past. When she speaks, every word resonates because she's earned her voice in the trenches where others got silenced. Or consider the single father who lost his business in a market crash. He saw his employees' livelihoods evaporate overnight, felt the mortgage company's letters multiply like locusts, and watched his savings dwindle to zero. Through sleepless nights, he learned to hustle, delivering pizzas, tutoring math, welding fences, whatever kept food on the table. Years later, when he addresses a room full of aspiring entrepreneurs, he doesn't quote theories. He recites strategies forged in desperation. His credibility is not a certificate on the wall, it's the grease under his fingernails and the wisdom in his calloused palms. People lean in because they know his roadmap was drawn in battle, not in a boardroom. Imagine the woman who survived an abusive marriage. She remembers the slammed doors, the whispered threats, the glass ceiling of fear that trapped her. Yet she found the strength to walk away, to rebuild her credit, to heal scars no one else saw. Now she leads support groups, her voice steady as she teaches others to name their worth, to demand respect, to reclaim joy. She doesn't give empty platitudes. She offers a lifeline woven from her own resilience. Her words carry authority because she's tasted the poison and discovered the antidote. You might know the cancer survivor who lost her hair, who fought each chemotherapy session like a gladiator, who stared down mortality in sterile rooms. When she speaks at fundraising events, she doesn't romanticize the pain. She narrates it raw. The day she forgot her own name, the night she wept into hospital sheets, the miracle of waking one more time. Her testimony ignites hope because death nearly had her story, and she snatched it back with trembling hands. Her authority to speak about life is unparalleled, for she's danced on the edge and chose to keep on breathing. Consider the immigrant who crossed borders without papers, who navigated hostile checkpoints, who survived hunger in back seats of overcrowded vans. He arrived speaking broken phrases, but he carried a heart full of courage. Today he stands in front of classrooms, board meetings, city councils, sharing lessons of perseverance, adaptability, and gratitude. He doesn't need credentials. His life is the credential. Every hardship he endured crystallizes into a message of possibility. If he could survive stateless nights, adapting to every hardship, then anyone can reimagine their limits. Reflect on the child of addicts who grew up patching leaks in a broken home, who learned early that love could become destructive when poured through poison cups. She survived the chaos of shattered routines, the shame of whispered rumors, the loneliness of hope deferred. Now as a therapist, she listens to clients with eyes that have already walked their path. She doesn't preach theories. She offers pathways she's traveled, proven by her own emergence from turmoil into healing. Her authority arises from having once been the one crying in the dark, and now she guides others toward the dawn. Even the marathon runner who collapsed at mile 26 speaks with authority to every would-be athlete who's ever considered quitting. He knows the taste of failure in his mouth, the ache in his legs, the doubt that whispers, "You don't have enough." When he says keep going, it's not a hollow cheer, it's the roar of a man who has seen every limit and shattered it. His story is not of a finish line photo op. It's of blistered toes, salted wounds, and yet an unquenchable will that gives him the right to stand on podiums and remind others that endurance was forged one agonizing step at a time. What about the teacher who survived a school shooting? She cried out when the first shot rang in the hallway. She pulled students to safety with trembling arms, and she now walks campus corridors, training staff in crisis response. She doesn't theorize about security protocols. She shares protocols, born from the instinct to protect at any cost. Her lectures resonate because every strategy she imparts was tested at the edge of tragedy. Her authority to speak on safety is invincible, for she stood in the breach while bullets flew. Survival is not mere existence, it's the crucible that births credibility. Every wound becomes a badge, every scar a story, every bruise a bulletin. When you survive something fierce, abuse, loss, failure, illness, you don't just gain empathy, you gain the authority to speak the words that heal, that inspire, that compel action. Your testimony becomes a trumpet that shatters apathy, a blueprint that charts unbeaten roads, a fire that ignites hope in hearts that once cowered in fear. So when you stand before an audience, remember you're not just speaking, you're validating every struggle, every tear, every triumphant moment you endured. Your voice carries weight because you've paid the price in the currency of survival. When you speak, your words don't echo in the void. They reverberate from the bedrock of experience, demanding to be heard, unlocking the power in everyone who realizes that if you could survive, so can they. You've stood at the edge of a wound so raw that the sting of it defined every breath, every thought, every moment.
Pain isn't just a bruise on the body, it's a fire that forges character. Think of the single mother whose world shattered when her partner walked away, leaving debts unpaid and innocence stolen. Every night she stared at empty plates and silence where laughter once lived. But in that season, she discovered an untapped reservoir of creativity, starting a small home bakery where each loaf she sold carried the taste of perseverance. Her pain gave birth to purpose, and the very thing that crushed her became the platform from which she rose. Consider the young professional passed over for promotion time and again, watching peers ascend, while she remained stuck in cubicle anonymity. Each denial felt like a noose tightening around her confidence. Yet in her frustration, she began volunteering after hours to lead workshops for new hires. In teaching them, she sharpened her own skills, learned leadership beyond job descriptions, and acquired relationships that became her network. What felt like a crushing blow, being invisible to her superiors, was actually the catalyst that unveiled her real gift for mentorship, transforming her pain into the oil of influence. You might recall the athlete who tore a ligament in mid-season, watching his dreams slip away in a single misstep. The doctor's prognosis was grim, months of immobilization, possibly never the same. Those cold hospital floors, that relentless physical therapy, felt like an insult to every sacrifice he'd made. But in the grind of those sessions, he discovered the mind-body connection he'd ignored in his sprint for medals. He studied nutrition, mental toughness, and biomechanics. When he returned to the track, he ran not just with stronger legs, but with a smarter strategy. His injury became the oil that greased the wheels of his greatest victory. Imagine the couple whose long-awaited child was born with complications, $1,000 hospital bill greeting them at every turn. Fear soaked their prayers, and nights felt endless as monitors beat their dread. Yet in counseling rooms and support groups, they found families walking the same path, sharing tips on diet, therapy, and legal aid. Their isolation turned into community. Their anguish became a bridge of empathy that led them to advocacy work for families in need. Their suffering was the seedbed for a ministry of mercy, the oil that anointed their journey with purpose beyond their own cradle of grief. There was the artist whose gallery debut was met with silence. No applause, no offers, only the echo of empty footsteps on the hardwood floor. In that moment, she felt her gift die in public view, but rejection taught her the language of persistence. She began selling small pieces at street fairs, connecting directly with people who resonated with her work. Those intimate conversations informed her next series, which sold out online before she could catch her breath. What seemed like the end of her dream was the pressure that produced the oil of resourcefulness. Even the writer who received rejection after rejection letter by letter can recognize the gold in her struggle. Each refusal honed her words, sharpened her concepts, demanded deeper authenticity. She pored over feedback like a miner sifting gravel until she struck the vein of her true voice. The manuscript that once felt dead in pile of no's became the novel that resonated with thousands. Her pain was the refining fire that yielded the oil of authenticity, lubricating her journey from overlooked novice to celebrated author. The entrepreneur who loses everything in a market crash knows this intimately. When banks foreclose and investors bail, when your name becomes a cautionary tale, every phone call is a reminder of failure. But in rebuilding, lean startups run out of a coffee shop, partnerships forged in shared adversity, pivoting to new niches, you learn resilience. That collapse becomes the oil of innovation, greasing the unpredictable pivots that lead to sustainable success. You may have felt your heart break so deeply that you swore it would never learn to beat again. Yet in that fracture you discovered songs you'd never sung, words you'd never written, empathy you'd never felt. That heartbreak was the pressing that produced the oil of compassion, allowing you to care for others whose wounds once felt unshareable. Every test, every trial, every twist of fate that feels unfair or unjust is actually an anointing in disguise. Pain is the mill that crushes the grain of your life until the oil of purpose flows. Crushing is not your condemnation, it is your consecration. The more you embrace the process, the more you realize that God doesn't waste a tear. He refines it into a river of strength, that carries you and everyone you touch toward destiny's shore. You've imagined the mountaintop, but the climb demands you shed every weight you thought defined you. Your destiny insists that you become someone you've never been. That means trading yesterday's comfort for tomorrow's possibility, stepping into a skin that feels unfamiliar, even awkward, until muscle memory catches up with vision. You know the gym rookie who stumbles into a fitness class, gasping for air while everyone else moves like water. She could have turned around and left, but instead she stayed past the trembling first set, fought through every wobble in her legs, and in time became the instructor whose confidence radiates from the stage. She wasn't born leading that room, she became that woman by embracing the discomfort of growth. Think of the mid-level manager who always played by the rules, who wore conservative suits and never voiced bold ideas in meetings. One afternoon, after watching a junior colleague present a radical solution, he felt a burning in his gut. That could have been me. So he started showing up in brighter ties, in meetings proposing what-if scenarios, in cross-functional teams, where failure wasn't an option but an experiment. His peers blinked at his transformation, but those who listened saw the value in someone who refused to remain who he'd always been. Or remember the shy teenager who hid behind her hair at every school event, content to be invisible. One day she signed up for debate club on a dare, trembling at her first podium appearance as every eye landed on her. Her voice cracked, her palms sweated, but she finished her argument and discovered the roar inside her that had been muffled by fear. Today she's the valedictorian, whose closing speech makes grown adults weep, a woman forged in the crucible of courage she never knew she possessed. You may know the story of the software engineer who coded alone in his apartment for years, the hermit of algorithms, until a friend invited him to pitch at a startup weekend. He showed up in jeans and a hoodie, terrified at the thought of selling an idea to strangers. But when he stepped onto the stage, he found a voice that translated ones and zeros into a passionate vision. His project won first place, investment offers followed, and he redefined himself as a founder, rather than a recluse. His destiny demanded that he become someone who could stand in the spotlight. Think about the young mother who spent her days washing dishes and folding laundry, pouring out love in meals and bedtime stories, but stifling her dreams of becoming a teacher. When the kids started school, she sat at the kitchen table with an open laptop and enrolled in online classes. The nights were long, her brain fogged with fatigue, but every essay turned and reshaped her identity. She isn't the mom who stayed at home. She's Miss Rivera, the first grade teacher whose former students still send her handmade cards. Her destiny required her to become a scholar she thought she'd lost. Consider the small business owner, whose brand was familiar but stale, whose sales plateaued because she was playing it safe. Then she took a course on digital marketing, swallowed pride to learn Instagram Lives, and launched a rebrand that felt like stepping into someone else's shoes. Her voice on camera was shaky at first, her authenticity raw, but customers flocked to the vulnerability she'd unlocked. She went from store owner to community builder, someone her audience felt they knew personally. Even your spiritual journey demands this transformation. You may have prayed the same prayers, huddled in the same pew, attended the same small group, wearing the same spiritual armor you picked up years ago. But destiny isn't satisfied with yesterday's faith. It beckons you to be a worship leader, to serve in missions, to carry a prophetic word that stirs nations. It means learning to pray in tongues, to fast for breakthroughs, to stand in dark rooms, with your voice hoarse from intercession. You become someone you've never been when you answer that call. There's the story of the engineer who calculated every risk in spreadsheets until he stood at the controls of his own life and launched his drone photography business. He went from corporate cubicle dweller to artist of the sky, framing landscapes he never noticed until he flew above them. His identity shifted as he mastered piloting laws, editing software, client relationships. His destiny demanded he become a creative professional, not just a number in a ledger. Reflection and reinvention go hand in hand. When the entrepreneur hits a plateau, she doesn't double down on old tactics. She experiments with new products, new markets, new partnerships. Each pivot requires her to learn new languages of commerce,
negotiation tactics, supply chain logistics, user experience design. In becoming someone she's never been, a novice again, she acclimates her mindset to growth. The teacher who once graded papers now writes curriculum. The nurse who once followed doctor's orders now runs a clinic. The musician who once played solos now conducts orchestras. Each one answered the summons to outgrow their previous identity. You too can't stay the person you were when the vision first ignited your heart. Every step toward destiny demands a new version of you. Braver, wiser, stronger, more vulnerable, more authentic. That fear you feel when you imagine yourself doing something you've never done. That's the signpost of transformation. Lean into it. Take the class. Join the group. Say yes to the audition. Book the flight. Because if you never move into that stretch, your destiny stays at a distance, mocking you with the echo of what if. The very essence of your purpose lies on the other side of who you are today, waiting for the birth of who you're meant to become.